scripture. As an overseer. Labor was in vain. Jesus is working his ass off. Can I say this like I'm at Abyssinia? Matthew chapter 9 opens with Jesus doing therapy on a paralyzed man. That's labor. He conducts human resource recruitment on Matthew, who was a former tax collector, and trains him to work the bank of the black Messiah. That's labor. Then Jesus opens resurrection and raises a young girl from the dead. That's labor. Jesus does optometry on a blind man and otolaryngology on the ears and the throat of a deaf man and a mute man. That's labor. And when we walk into the work of verse 35, Jesus is still laboring for his people. It says Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. That's labor. And verse 36 slapped me in the face because this BMW, this black man, black Messiah working, had done all of this divine labor. Scriptures say when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. I'm sure real estate can feel it sometimes, can't it? Like sheep without a shepherd, harassed and helpless. Now, wait a minute. All of this work, and there were still crowds of people harassed and helpless and homeless, like sheep without a shepherd. Those words in Greek actually mean that they were disrespected and disregarded, literally thrown down to the ground. And it seems like Jesus' work might be in vain, but this leads me to a point, and I'm about done. If we're going to develop some holy harvest hands, we have to first recognize that there are seasons and strategies of simply marking time. I know this superficial and insatiable culture by greed and individualism and hedonism and orgiastic free play, uses faith in even Jesus and God as a capitalistic conduit for us to believe that every season is the season of prosperity and progress and abundance. But the devil is a liar. Tailored to teach us that we can be exactly in the divine will of God. We can be the embodiment and the essence of God's endeavors and maneuvers and still not have much material or even ministerial produce to show for. In this text, going on the circuit, preaching around town, proclaiming the news of the kingdom of God, healing every sickness and disease. And after all that labor, he looks out on a crowd and sees that he's barely made a dent in the structural suffering of his people. I'm sure real estate feels like that sometimes. This is the hail of the harvest. Jesus did not cause the diseases. He does not cause the sickness. The root cause is an inequitable and structure that y'all will see as y'all lean deeper into this data. And I'm sure every time he healed somebody individually, somebody within the structure of the system used it as a means to justify that the person was not corrupt or evil. But this text challenges Jesus is showing us that we can work our fingers to the bone in an unjust system and still have our resources slip, fingers being snatched out of our hands. And when the system is structured such that our work seems to be in vain, folks with some holy harvest hands, folks like you and me, have to recognize the benefits of simply marking time. Y'all know what marking time is? That's what soldiers do when they are marching and can no longer march forward, so they have to march in place. But they keep on moving. And I wondered why soldiers wouldn't just halt. Why not just stop altogether? Why not just throw up your hands and say to hell with it all? But to halt would mean to recognize and accent the end of something. Mark time, we admit that although we aren't moving forward, we would prefer we simply stand still. We got to keep on moving. Shout out to Sounds of Blackness. Because we know we are now, and what we're dealing with now and what we're going through now is not the final destination. Sometimes we have to mark time to testify no matter what we're dealing with right now. We refuse to go back to 1968. Sometimes we can't immediately reap the fruits of the harvest, but that doesn't mean God is not still moving through us. That's why Jesus says in verse 37, the harvest is plentiful. Not will be plentiful, it is plentiful. Perfect present tense. Is. Somebody say is. It is plentiful. In other words, your work is not in vain. God is recognizing the work that has been done, and God is the God of the harvest. I'm really done, but let me, in case y'all never hear me again or never invite me back, one last point. Now, I'm Baptist. I usually have 3, but I only brought 2 today because I know how y'all are with time. This is my second and final point I want to press, and I'm done. If we're going to develop harvest hands, say harvest hands, then we must not only recognize seasons and strategies of marking time, we also have to realize that there's spiritual support for making trouble. That's really what y'all came to do today. Y'all just didn't know it. Y'all are here to make some trouble. But there's spiritual support for making trouble. Remember, I said that God's hands are connected to our hands, and God is willing to tip the scales of justice in our favor. Sometimes, in order to experience that reality, we have to be willing to upset the apple cart or use our hands to disturb and disrupt the systems and the structures of injustice, inequity, and exploitation. We don't just mark time as an act of assimilation or pacifism. No, we mark time as an act of organizing, really as an act of war. Don't log in. We mark time because we recognize it takes time to plan a revolution. You must believe that God provides the spiritual support for us to make what the late great John Lewis called good trouble. What if I told you when Jesus says the harvest is plentiful, it was actually a declaration of war against all the unjust and evil forces in that society? Madam President, what if I told you it was actually a war cry? What if I told you, you being here today is actually a declaration of war. It's actually war cry. I know we generally understand harvest in terms of obtainment of material prosperity, but there's also a biblical understanding of harvest as the realization of political and economic empowerment. Harvest means some economic benefit, but it also means to realize some political boldness. Harvest is about jubilee, but it's also about the judgment and justice. The Greek word therismos refers to an eschatological or end-time manifestation where God has stepped in to judge the wicked and the righteous. When Jesus says the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few, he said there, ooh, if my brothers in my community, if we only knew that God was ready to move on our behalf right now, if we could just get a few more folks to put their hands to head in the game, if we could get all of these folks who have been exploited and oppressed by the system of the people made policy, if we could just God enough to organize ourselves, be willing to make enough good trouble to shift the landscape, and we will see God show up in ways we've never seen in our lives. Realize, Sister Tamara, that but there's some hope associated with it. Jesus is saying, I know things look big and bad. They look big and bad and powerful. The evils and the injustice look untamable and uncontrollable. God is more than anything standing against us. If we ever believed God enough, not just for a car, for new money or new honey or a little job, but some change in the atmosphere, a shift in the landscape, would be willing to cause enough, resist enough people, and we would not just see the harvest, we would see the as well. If we just God enough to make some, God would open doors that nobody could shut. God would out of no ways. God would bring life to that which was dead and buried. Y'all would be stingy with y'all amens right there. So God gave me a concrete example of how this works in our practice. God used Nicole Hannah Jones to teach me something. This black, brilliant, beautiful woman's hands didn't stop at the 1619 project. Earlier in the sermon at the offset, if you weren't too asleep, I was highlighting the achievement of her being granted tenure at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. But God and Nicole Hannah Jones had something more magnificent and miraculous in mind. After they granted her tenure, she flipped the script. She shifted the language. Her friend rejected their offer. Somebody say good trouble. Tired of settling the hell of the harvest, and some help showed up. I think I feel about now, but I ain't gonna preach y'all. Decided to take her and beautiful black hand to Howard University. And when they asked her why she did it, she said, I'm my entire life proving that I belong in elite white built for black people. For free to go to our own neighborhoods, our talents and resources to our own neighborhoods, own communities, and help to build them up as well. In other words, brothers, sisters, friends, and trusted God enough to make some would make a open a door. She not limited to the hell of the harvest, but she also the to know that you can trust God enough to take a risk on yourself and your people today. You can realize what the songwriter said: lifting of the hands, of the heart, lifting of the eyes, be the heels to where our help comes from. God of heaven, maker of the land, manager of our labor, who will manifest hands to the plow, help liberate our people together. And amen.
So the blessing and the curse of the black preacher at the start of your event, right? Right? They don't follow time, right? But thank you for bringing that message. It is an awesome foundation for our purpose here today. I am Rashida Jones. I serve as the State of Housing in Black America Memphis chairperson for today's event. I also serve as the national treasurer for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. So I want to thank again everyone for being in attendance. I will start with a little bit of housekeeping. We are asking that cell phone that we go mute those, put them on silent, make a call. There's tea, feel free to indulge in those things as you need. Don't feel like you can't get up while we're talking. We want to make sure that this is interactive. You get good notes, but you're also not dying of thirst and you're not starving. It's a long day. Okay. So I was to give the purpose of today's event. The State of Housing in Black America, the Memphis Edition. I've been instructed to tell what the purpose of today's event is. The purpose of today's event is to galvanize thought leaders to have a provoking conversation about the why of black homeownership. Why black homeownership is under attack. The why black homeownership never been popular. So we talk about the purpose of today's event, and we're going to talk about how for so long we've allowed black homeowners to stand still. Homeownership is the cornerstone of building in this country. A broken American dream for black families in the city and across this country. I'm supposed to tell you about the purpose of today's event. NAREB has been at the forefront of the fight for black homeownership, democracy in housing, housing equity, housing justice for a very, very long time. Nationally, we were organized in 1997. However, chapters on the ground doing this prior to that. I had a conversation with the city official, someone from the housing department. And in this conversation, I invited them to come out and attend this event. The person shared with me that the city of Memphis had done a state of housing event before. And I said, no, the city of Memphis has done a version of the state of housing. But they haven't done this event before. So I want to tell each of you that you are fortunate to sit in this room. And certainly there have been other formats, other organizations, other groups to bring this message today. We all talk data, we all talk stats, we all talk geography, we all talk demographics. We all talk those things, right? We talk about products, we talk about access to credit, we talk about financial literacy. But I assure you, if you're familiar with the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, as we are today at this time, you will leave here well informed about the well-intended goals of this organization with a piercing lens as to what our why is. Realtist, we are a core group of professionals in all areas of the real estate industry. We live this and we internalize the struggles of black families who seek what everybody wants to touch, to have, to hold. Dream. We live this. The Realtists live this. If you want to understand how vitally important homeownership is and why this crisis must be addressed. Ask a realtist. In closing, I applaud each of you because we do understand your time is important. We do understand that there are some other things you could be doing from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. today. But I want you to understand the value of being in a room like this. The privilege of sitting in a room like this, in a country club, in the city of Memphis, while we talk about disparity, inequality, and institutional racism, because that's what we're talking about at its core. The opportunity to shed light on something so very critical to the wealth building of African American families. So as I have highlighted maybe the downside of today's conversation, we intend to also have the goal of what we want to share today and the purpose of today's event to bring forward solutions. So we'll have the hard conversation, but we want to leave here with solutions. So we'll bring forward the opportunity of collaboration. We cannot sit and do nothing, right? The result of doing nothing is that we don't have Black home ownership as a cornerstone to wealth building. There is power in this room. So I encourage each of you to take good notes, to prepare your questions. There are cards on the table. We will not take questions after each section, but we do ask you to write them down and we will collect them. I encourage you to ask others to tune in to the live stream. It's available at shebamemphis.com. So you can text that to folks you think need to hear this conversation. It is now time to bring the state of housing in Black America, the Memphis Edition, as no other organization but the National Association of Real Estate Brokers could do. I encourage you to leave here well informed, encouraged, and leave with a plan to be engaged in the solutions. I thank you. So we have the Executive Director of the Black Coalition for Housing, also the National Assistant Treasurer for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, Mr. Courtney Q. Jones.
Good morning, Memphis. Good morning, Realtist Nation. Hey, weather is livable, folks, here today. Pretty happy about that as a big guy in the suit. But I have the privilege and honor bringing before us today the state broker. This gentleman is not only the CEO of LA Broker, which is a mortgage brokerage. Not only has he been in real estate for over 23 years, he's managed the oldest Black property management company, First Security Investment Corporation in Los Angeles, California. But he's an advocate for Black building. I talk about my brother enthusiasm bubbles. Because in this business, the mighty words of our teacher today, and thank you on those words today, it definitely was an upliftment on. I can probably speak to the others that it did the same as well. It's important to hear things like iron, right? So when I have the privilege of talking to this brother here, we go at it regularly on this subject of advocacy, Black wealth building, gentrification, collaboration, ownership. So, without further ado, forward to this gentleman on today. I have the privilege and honor of introducing our second, Ashley Thomas.
He's a little taller. Good. I Rashida, because we both obviously Rashida Jones inviting me and allowing me to take part in such a phenomenal event. Thank you to my brother for that was wonderful. We're going to take that one on the road. So he can go. Association Real Estate Opportunity and standing for on the national. It's very important to items. Let me just say this. Listen, I feel your pain. I'm happy that some beat those Warriors last. I will go say that, but being from LA, over Cali, I won't take. I supported. Association Real Estate Brokers found we all 1947. It's something that we have been asking for a very long time in terms of increasing black home ownership. But since 47, and we still find ourselves fighting for the same things that we were fighting for in 47. And so great continue to fight, because the fight. So I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to come here today. The conversation must always. With that said, I'm going to talk about some very quickly. I won't be before you long. And talk where we go. But the restorative implant. Restorative, because the black experience in America is one that is always a detriment when things occur against our community. The conversation is always how to move. Never about restorative. It's never about a restitution. And in my opinion, any crime that's ever committed, that says, well, now we do the conversation about restitution. And when there's crimes committed against our community, it's always, how do we move forward? So let's talk about the number one inequality that's a barrier to black wealth in America is income inequality. If we do not have the income to compete, right, black women make 63 cents on the dollar of a white male doing the same exact job. So in a competitive real estate market, she is already starting off 37% behind the curve to be competitive in that offer for that market. And so when we talk about building black wealth, we always have to start off with income inequality. If impacts credit, I don't have the to get an eviction notice or lose my job, that's a problem. If I'm unable to send my children to school, and I have to take out more student loans, they are starting behind the curve as well. So income inequality is a large issue. And so we're fighting for down payment, not down payment that I got to pay back. Restorative. Okay, and we're going to expound on that as the day goes on. Our next one is student loan reform. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. I always get in this, but she's not here today. My wife has student loans. I don't, but together we do. Right? So I'm like, the payment. I think she watching on the live stream too. So hey, baby. We pay the payment, but her degree is only in her name. The math degree, but But that's something that's a barrier. So it gets back into income inequality. If we had the resources, or her parents had the resources, or my parents had the resources to just sign a check and you go to school and you don't have to worry about it, that wasn't our case. And I'm assuming that's not the case for many in this room, that we were just able to go to college or university or with financial support from our family. Many of us were the first time attending in our families to a university. And so student loan reform is something that we want to deal with. I'll talk very briefly on the lines of how this works. So many people are on a deferment. You don't right now. So underwriting will say, well, we have to factor in this debt, 0.5 point. FHA, sometimes it's gone up as high as of 1 point. At 1 point, it was actually 2 points. Okay, and so we're going to factor this in your debt ratio for you to get qualified on this mortgage. But you don't have to have a payment right now. You balanced underwriting. Because I don't have a payment today. Everything in the loan application is based on a photograph. It's a snapshot. Picture. Credit 6. You can these in a 667. I can have a raise from my job, from my employer that says ND raise, but it's based on my snapshot. Today, you're this, so I'm not going to give you future income because I can't count that. It's very likely to say that many people go to university to raise their income levels throughout the years. So I know that you have your degree. I'm not going to give you future income on that. But I also know that you don't have to pay this loan, but I'm going to tax you for that future debt that you don't have to pay today. And so that's so even strives as an organization to lower the percent that is calculated. Very happy about that, but work to be done. So very much a person, and when we talk but not in America, it doesn't always work that way. So our job is to continue to fight to make sure that the math works. Next, loan level price adjustments. I won't go into too much detail on the next speaker. His pride and joy. He's been preaching about this for in 2000. And it didn't matter how well you thought you were doing. It became very humble. Investments, what it is. I got some. You know, next year. You know, so but price adjustments, just to give that what it is qualify for a loan. Now we have adjustments that are cost associated with that loan. And so it makes the loan more expensive, even though you're qualified. We're saying you're qualified, but based on criteria that has been developed, we're going to turn this into profit center. And so as we talk about student loans, talk about loan level price adjustments, this is a capitalist society. And we have to understand the name of capitalism, which is a very close relative to racism. Okay? So sometimes we look at things from a different perspective, but it's based on capitalism, which is very closely related. So I won't go to too much detail. I think we kind of get the rest of that. But if you have a 660 FICO score, you're paying more for your loan than somebody who has a 680, who's paying more than a 700, right? And there's no guarantee that the performance is going to be any different. I always like to say that when we had the foreclosure crisis in 2008, and it felt like it lasted, 4 or 5 years at least. But, you know, the people that lost their homes had 800 credit scores, 700, you know, and 600. There's people that still have those homes that bought in 06 that had a 560 credit score, 580 credit score. So why is it that we have a system that's designed to be a profit center when we say that the dream in America is homeownership? We should be opening the floodgates to allowing as many people to enter homeownership as possible. And last, our fourth position is a bias. Y'all heard about that? Okay. All right. So let's talk about appraisal bias, because there's two concerns, and we make sure that we're not getting caught only on one side of the fence. So undervaluation is what we've all heard and seen. He is being undervalued. There's an appraisal that came out, 1.2 million, the other one 700,000. One appraisal came at 168,000, the other one came at 108,000. And we're hearing these stories of constants, right? So our main positions on appraisal bias is all the stories that social media, these were well-to-do people that could afford multiple appraisals. Most of my clients are limping to the closing, right? We like, a minute, we got to get a gift. You got a cousin, we need some. So most of my clients aren't I'm just going to keep paying for it until I can point out the discriminatory facts in this appraisal. Clients are like, can you cover the appraisal and I get you back? And I understand that. Because that gets into income inequality that we're talking about. And we do. Our community, and we do whatever we have to do to try to help a homeowner become a homeowner. Overvaluation issue too. Can you imagine you bought a overvalued and now the interest rates are up and we're talking about a potential crash? Some of our communities were underwater, way lower than other communities because of overvaluation. We're asking for is fair valuation. I don't care what the number is as long as it's fair. Get this report and say that appraisal, then we can have a conversation. If we're having a difference, then we have to get involved in. I would just is at that table on both of those conversations. And we talk about there was a report that came out in mortgage application, 22-year low. You know, so I thought about that. 22 years. We're in the year 20. And so we went through a foreclosure crisis where the world was about to come in. That's what it felt like. It did. Okay. Banks at the table at the White House talking about they might have to close. The entire financial institution was at a point of crumbling and collapsing. We had to invoke money to save financial institutions, and yet and still, mortgage applications were higher then than they are today. I need us to take a minute and think about it and why advocacy is so important. We could talk about loan level appraisal biases. We can talk about student loan reform. We can talk about all these items. We have to talk about the we have here today. These reforms are so important for awareness and making sure that your fight is the same. You know what they say? They say real estate is local. So you can be in Memphis and you can be talking about blight or maybe properties on this side of town that aren't being attended to. I could be in Los Angeles and we're talking about there's no properties available. But you know the one commonality is that no matter where I go, what we talk about, black people seem to be at the bottom of every urban area, every city, major city in America. And that's the question that no matter where we're from, we all have the same fight. So let's continue to fight. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. I always like to drop the mic and go sit down, but I have an assignment. Mark Alston is the next speaker. Let me get you his information, because I could talk about Mark, but I want to start off professional and then I'll end personal. Mark Alston is the CEO and owner of Alston and Associates, a real estate and mortgage company in Los Angeles. He currently serves as the Public Affairs Committee's chairman for NAREB, and he's served in this position for many years. He's responsible for some of the policies that we have. So we might have started off. I gave about 4 policies that we're currently fighting on, but Mark and I fought about 10 policies, and we went through, and it's iron sharpen iron, as the pastor stated this morning, and so we talk on a regular about everything. From the impact of Ukraine, impacts Black America, the impact of oil prices and how that impacts Black America. And then when we talk about sports and we argue about that as well. But I do want to tell a quick story about Mark Alston, because I think it's important. When I joined the organization, first time I went to a local chapter meeting in Los Angeles, speaking, and he was talking about Black homeownership and the disparities in our community. And at that time, if you remember when I said earlier, at that time I was doing very well in my business, and so I was really like at the meeting, you know, for the catfish and breakfast. It was, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't really there for advocacy. I was like, I'll go advocate, I'm gonna do this. But it wasn't until I heard him speak and it opened my eyes to something bigger than my desk. Opened my eyes to unity, and that we all have a responsibility as practitioners. I joined the organization, National Association of Real Estate Brokers, and I began to realize that I wouldn't be in business had it not been for those that came before me, that fought for me to even be able to write an offer or review a loan package, those things. And so I was very touched by that. But we ended up having an issue in Los Angeles. So we had an REO. During that time, REO was very prevalent. But that had REO contracts were outside of the community. But all of the REOs, a high concentration, were in the communities. The property, we called a listing agent, be like, oh, I opened up the locks, there's no key here. And they said, well, I'm not coming there till, next Tuesday. And you're like, well, I'll show my clients this property today. But since they were an hour away, they weren't going to drive that at that moment, right? And so Mark started making noise. He said, well, I like this guy. I like to make noise. Like, that's what I like about what the pastor said earlier. Like, I'm ready to fight. I love a good fight, So Mark said, fight this. I was like, well, let's fight. We gonna fight. Let's 3:30 where we meeting. So then he taught me about organizing, right? 'Cause I'll go down to the senator's office, and so we were meeting at his office, and we talked about, and we put all these minds together, because as iron sharpens iron, my ideas, he had his ideas, and other brokers had their ideas. We honed it together. Idea and Mark, and so we were, I believe, 27 brokers with no REO market, REO accounts. And so that's something that that I'm very proud to have taken part of. I told my children I was one of the benefactors of this movement, and I said we gonna have Christmas this year, So it was something that important because and it wasn't about the money, and it wasn't about the opportunity to get into the REO experience. It was more so about when I went to this first property, and I just tell this really quick story because I know Mark come up. When I went to my very first property, it was an elderly black woman being evicted, and we had a sheriff lockout on that day. I never, and so I was like, the sheriff locked her out. They said, lock the door. She just got to sit on the curb. I was like, I can't leave her on this curb. So now I'm like, can I get you a hotel? Can I do anything for you? Where do you want to go? My car, I drive you anywhere you want to go. She was like, no, I'm just going to sit here, right? Well, I guess we're going to sit here. And this was in a part of LA, so it's about midnight now. We still sitting up there. It's cold. Come on, please let me help you out. So about 12:15, it's a funny story. So about 12:15, she said, all right, I'm tired now. I'm going to church. And she got up and walked away to the church that was like 2 doors down. But I tell you that story because it was important for her to see my face. It was important for her to see somebody like her and have a different conversation, because the next person, she said, I just want to see if you was going to really, how much you really, and she said, I appreciate that. So I thank Mark for opening up that opportunity. But without further ado, a round of applause.
Hello, Memphis. It's interesting that story. Or knock on somebody's house is no longer yours. I don't want to see the life go out and knock on the door. I represent Bank of America, or Citibank, or Chase. And today is the day we have to decide how you're going to leave. But better me with compassion than somebody else who could care less. You know what I mean? So let me get on here to do. I appreciate y'all hospitality. Man, we had dinner last night. We went to Thomas Bird's office and we watched the game, and my boss And we laughed and we talked and we had conversation in that Memphis hospitality. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Wonda McGowan and Thomas, and so much. A great time last night. I'm here to do the state of housing and black. Pastor, I appreciate you. You said you're the blackest church in Memphis. I'm the blackest man in NAREB. You think I'm joking? I'm unashamedly, unapologetically black. I want to say I'm not diverse. I'm never going to speak at another diversity equity conference. I tend to represent other than not diverse, here to talk about black stuff. To have a black family conversation. If it doesn't, that's okay. Listen to the conversation. But I want to talk about black concerns and be black. Is it okay if I just be black today? Okay? So the state of housing in black America, I don't use the term African American either. I don't want anybody to be confused. I'm a black American. My daddy was a black American. He served in the Navy. He fought for the country. Black people have fought for this. I don't want to disenfranchise myself. Every man needs a country, a flag, and a home. And so I stand strong in that belief. So I'm a black, I use the term black today. State of housing in black America was the vision, the intellectual property or idea of a past NAREB president, Maria Kong. She had this idea, and it hadn't formed to the way that it is today. Her idea was to take it to HBCUs and talk about empowering black people to get into real estate. Next NAREB president, Julie Cartwright, kind of put it on a fast track. And then we started doing the State of Housing Report. We've been doing it since 2012. This is going to be our 10th report. It used to be when you researched black stuff in housing, we used to have to look at everybody else's historical data. Today, the state of housing in black America has been, in large part, wherever other people historical data come concerning black folks. So we really are proud of what we have done, the progress we have made. If you start researching stuff that has to do with black housing in black America, today you will find a lot of NAREB information, generated information. Too often, when it comes to black wealth and white wealth, too often when it comes to housing, we're standing on the outside looking in. I don't know if you've ever had this feeling, but I do. I do. Matter of fact, while I'm thinking about it, this sure is a nice part of Memphis. I've never been in this part of Memphis. I've been to Memphis two or three times. But it didn't look like this. I almost got confused. It's a nice part of Memphis. Fourth quarter 2021, black homeownership stood at 43.1%. Now, white homeownership is at fourth quarter 74.4%. That's a 31% gap. In the third quarter last year, white homeownership was at 74%, went up to 74.4%. Asian homeownership was at 60.2%, went up to 61.2%. Hispanic homeownership was at 48.3%, went up slightly to 48.4%. And the only homeownership percentage that went down in the fourth quarter of last year was black homeownership, and it went down significantly, 0.9%. Let me say to you that if you're taking pictures, I will provide this presentation to Wanda, and if you contact Wanda, feel free. It's not proprietary. It's a message that needs to get out. 2019, we started the year with our home ownership at 41.9%. We went up for 2019 to 44.0%. 2020, I got it backwards. No, that's correct. 2020, we started with 44.1%. We went down to, we started at 44%, we went up to 44.1. In 2021, we started at 45.1%, and we went down to 43.1%. The gap between black and white home ownership is 31.3%. In 1968, when the Fair Housing Act was signed, you guys remember what was happening in 1968? I'm sure in this city we know what happened in 1968. And you know, it's interesting. If you look up the civil rights movement, it will either say 1947 to 1968 or 1955 to 1968, but in all cases, it ends with the assassination of Martin Luther King in 1968. In 1968, black home ownership was at 42%. White home ownership was at 63.9%. The Fair Housing Act was signed. The gap between black and white home ownership when that act was signed was 21.9%. Now, 54 years later, white home ownership has increased to 74.4%. Black home ownership has basically remained the same, but the gap has increased. It's our contention, it's the state of housing in black America contention that this is intentional. It's not happenstance. It's not an accident. It's not because blacks are less or worse people or don't want to be homeowners. It's intentional. Public policy. What is public policy? Public policy is law. Public policy and tradition have served to block access and severely restrict black home ownership. Public policy, the law, and tradition, how we always have done things, have served to severely restrict and block black home ownership. What do I mean? Exclusionary zoning, private covenants, predatory housing contracts, eminent domain and urban renewal, racially biased appraisals. Ashley just talked about that. And racially disparate housing finance policies. I want to give you some examples. There has been targeted opposition. Key word here is targeted. There has been targeted opposition to black home ownership and wealth since the Emancipation Proclamation. And what the question I always have in my mind is, why is there opposition in America to black home ownership? Why is that a problem? Why is there targeted opposition to black home ownership? Racially exclusive zoning. You guys familiar with that? In Atlanta, they had R1 and R2. R1 meant white people could live there. R2 meant black people could live there. Racially exclusive zoning. Municipalities that set up laws that said blacks can't live where whites live and whites can't live where blacks lived. This was outlawed. It was brought to court in Louisville, Kentucky, through a case where Charles Buchanan, a white guy, sold some property to a black guy, William Worley, with the intent of William Worley building a house to live in. Violated Louisville, Kentucky's racially exclusive zoning law, and so he did not, when they brought it to him and filed suit, he refused to continue building the house, so the seller sued him. The seller won in Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville, Kentucky said he needed to finish that contract and buy that house. He appealed it, took it to the state of Kentucky. The seller won again. Went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said this was unenforceable, and it began the end. It did not end them, but it began the end of racially disparate zoning, racially exclusive zoning laws. So with that then, they started what are called private covenants. The house I live in Los Angeles has a private covenant in it. What does this covenant, what do these covenants say? That this property shall not be sold, leased, or otherwise disposed of for a period of 99 years to any person of African descent. 99 years. This was in 1947. We still wouldn't be able to get there yet. We still have a few more years. The 1934 Housing Act. You guys remember what happened in 1929, right? You don't remember what happened, but you know what happened. We had the Great Depression, the stock market crash. The country went backwards financially. 50% of the houses in America were in foreclosure. You know, so white home ownership was at 50%. What's the highest rate that black home ownership's ever been? 49.7%. It's never been 50%. But it was 50% for white America, and it was such a catastrophe, such a tragedy, that they started a national finance program to increase home ownership. They started the FHA. They passed the 1934 National Housing Act. The National Housing Act was signed on June 27, 1934 by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to improve housing conditions and to make housing and mortgages more accessible and affordable. The problem is they started the FHA. But the FHA institutionalized racism in housing because it was designed not to loan to black people. What we don't think about with FHA, we think about FHA as something to purchase a single-family house, but we need to realize that FHA was used to finance the construction of the suburbs as well. So the developers developed the suburbs. The FHA provided the financing for the people to buy, the white people to buy the houses in the suburbs. This is the Memphis redlining map. FHA created the Homeowners Loan Corporation, who then mapped the country according to where, let me show you this first. This is what red means. Obsolescence, Negro concentration, excessive ground rents in many cases. So where the red areas are where blacks lived, right? The yellow areas are no immediate danger of Negro encroachment, but there is a heavy concentration of Negroes in the section adjoining. Let me go back. This is Memphis. Some of you guys are familiar with this map. You know what's interesting too, and what I've come to find out, is this map just wasn't used for housing. This map was used for city planning. It was used to decide where they planted trees or poured concrete. It was used to decide where they put in hazardous plants, that are plants where they did different types of building that created a hazardous environment. And now we find that blacks have a shorter lifespan and more disease. It has to do with this map. It was used to decide who would get insurance and who would not get insurance. These maps were much worse than just housing. In the green area, that's the first grade. That's the new housing subdivisions for white only. The blue area is the second grade. That's for established old white neighborhoods, all white. Yellow was close to black neighborhoods, and the red, of course, were black or hazardous neighborhoods. We looked at this. So this is part of an appraisal from 1934. The yellow is the area 3, and the blue is the area 2. This isn't the worst area, and it's not the best area. What's the difference between the two? In the yellow area, you could get an FHA loan, but you had to put 85% down, and you could finance 15%. In the blue area, you could get an FHA loan, but you put 15% down, and you finance 85%. And of course, in the red area, there was no opportunity for loans at all. So it's not that 100% of black people never got an FHA loan. There was a couple, but you had to put 85% down. Because we didn't have access to institutional financing, the financing that was available at the time, we started doing private contracts. We went into contracts with the sellers. As those white folks left out of the area, left out of the inner city, then we replaced them in the inner city, but we couldn't get finance, so we wanted to buy and own our own houses, just like we did then, just like we do now. So we went into deals with the sellers. Private land contracts, all-inclusive trust deeds, where they sold us the house for 20 to 25% above the market value. And then they did a land contract like a rental agreement, right? We paid the interest. They did not transfer title. And if something changed or they got mad, we couldn't win in court. They would evict us like we were tenants and resell the house again. In Chicago, where Courtney's from, they say that $1.5 billion of lost wealth through black equity was lost because of this, just in that one black belt area, bronze belt area in Chicago, because of this process. Eminent domain, the 1949 Housing Act and the 1956 Interstate Highway Act decimated black neighborhoods. They went through neighborhoods like Overtown in Florida, where blacks were that were close to what was going to be a great neighborhood, and they took the property from the people, destroyed the black neighborhoods. And you know, they talk about highways or freeways are racist, and people make fun of that. But our freeways are racist in that they go through past your neighborhood where they didn't put an off-ramp, they didn't put an on-ramp, and so your local businesses died. That's how these freeway systems were designed without you in mind. But remember, slaves were property of no value once they were no longer slaves. So the areas that they lived in were the red areas with obsolescence of no value. So the areas that you occupied were of no economic value, so you weren't taken into consideration when they designed the freeway system in this country. This is not an accident. The displacement of black Americans and urban renewal were so intertwined that urban renewal was referred to as Negro removal. Then we had what we celebrated, and we still celebrate, the Fair Housing Act of 1968. Again, we know what was happening in 1968. Martin Luther King was assassinated. The nation was on fire. 150 riots throughout the country, and they had to come up with something. So they had this bill that NAREB was actually involved in the first Fair Housing Act called the Rumford Act in California that had made its way to Congress, had been bouncing around the houses in Congress for 3 years. It couldn't get passed. It couldn't get voted on. You know, so it was bouncing around. This happened. The nation's on fire. They needed to do something, so they revived the bill. So April 4th, Martin Luther King was assassinated. In the next 7 days, it passed in Congress, in the House of Representatives, passed in the Senate, and was signed into law on April 11th, 1968. What couldn't be done for years was accomplished in 7 days. The real truth of the matter is what we call the Fair Housing Act of 1968 is Title VIII of the Indian Civil Rights Act. That's fine, but nobody ever tells us that. Title I prohibited interference with federal troops. This was a compromise bill. They had to do something to get back in control. Titles 2 through 7 dealt with Indian civil rights. Title 8, that's what we call the Fair Housing Act. Title 9 prevented intervention in people that were processing cases, intimidation. Title 10, this was back again to what was happening in the country, civil obedience. It made it a felony, punishable by up to 5 years imprisonment for into any way obstruct, impede, delay, or adversely affect the movement of police, firemen, or commerce. That had nothing to do with fair housing. Had everything to do with what was going on in the country. And then they had the H. Rap Brown rider attached to it. A rider attached to the bill also made it a felony to travel from state to state with the intent to incite, promote, encourage, or participate in and carry out a riot. What's the difference between a protest and a riot? The police just saying it is. So what they did was, you know, our black leaders would go from one city to the next city to provide leadership and support in order to move our advocacy forward. They made it a felony, a penitentiary offense to do that. Then they passed the Omnibus Crime Bill and Safe Streets Act. This was the outgrowth of that, which gave $50 million to local police stations. That's when you started seeing the police with military-type armaments, tanks, and that sort of stuff policing our neighborhoods. All this came out of the Fair Housing Act. According to the Economic Policy Institute on the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act, that there's been no progress for blacks on home ownership, unemployment, and incarceration in that 50 years. No progress. Matter of fact, I would submit to you that it's gotten worse. You know, I was just watching the Attorney General of Virginia, black lady, right, former Marine. And I agree with her when she says things have changed. We are in the Crescent Club in Memphis. Things have changed, but the more they change, the more they stay the same. We have to quit being excited when they give us the right to come in somewhere, but not the right to own the place. When they deny us the economic opportunities, we just get happy because I'm in the spot. As NAREB, we go to meetings and take pictures, but we don't address any real issues because we just want to be liked. So we take pictures in the meeting, don't take any qualified personnel to address the actual issues, and then we post the pictures as if we did something, and we wonder why we ain't made no progress. This is how I get in trouble. And it's okay. What's that trouble you talked about? That's right. You know, I've made a decision. Politics be damned. I didn't fly from Los Angeles, get stuck on the plane when they couldn't get the door open for 45 minutes, wait an hour for a car. I got to leave here and drive to Birmingham to do this tomorrow. I didn't do all that to not come here and say what I came to say. You know, hopefully if you're in this room, something will be said to make you more transformational as opposed to transactional. The money is important, but your opportunity to impact the lives and change the dynamics and the direction of families, that's what's most important. That's what have you ever had the opportunity, I talked about this last night, to have a client sit across from your desk and shed tears because they never thought they'd be able to buy a house? Have you ever spent a year or two working with somebody to get them in position with no promise of payment, and then it works out? Man, that's what God put you in that position to do. Then we had the Great Recession of 2008, and our friends passed Dodd-Frank, right? Dodd-Frank. I believe, I get in trouble for this, that Dodd-Frank is a barrier as opposed to a bridge when it comes to black home ownership. What they did was say, we're going to make sure so many of you lost your houses. We're not going to let you lose your houses no more. You know why? Because you're going to be so overly qualified before we give you a chance, you're not going to have to worry about it. Well, as black folks, we need to be promoters of risk. We can't be risk averse. I think it's more racist to tell me that you're going to protect me from myself than give me the opportunity to try and do my best and make it work. Let me try and fail. But don't stop me before I get started. All you do is take away my strength. Home valuation, these are some of the aspects of Dodd-Frank. Home valuation code of conduct. That's what started the national appraisal management companies. They said the market crashed because they overvalued, they allowed too many black folks to get houses. They overvalued houses in your neighborhood when the reality was the market crashed because of uncollateralized swaps and derivatives at the stock Wall Street level. Had nothing to do with housing. So we got national appraisal management companies. The price of appraisals went up. The quality of appraisals went down. All the local appraisals left the business. And so now we get people that don't look like us coming in our neighborhoods that they're scared to come in. I don't know about here, but especially in LA. You know, and they give you a value for something that they don't see has any value at all. They wouldn't live there if you paid them. So how are they going to properly value our appraisals? And then when we talk about appraisal bias, the one thing that you didn't say, in a black neighborhood, if appraisal is done perfect today, it's still bias based on historical undervaluation. If it's done perfect, and they use perfect comps today, it wasn't done perfect the last time, and the time before that, and the time before that, and the time before that. So we standing on a low-value appraisal in a low-value neighborhood based on someone else's perception of value. But now, watch them come in and revalue that neighborhood and push you to somewhere else. Watch and see what happens. Then we have the National Mortgage Licensing System. They said, oh, we had all those people getting into business that didn't have, they weren't loan officers. They didn't have no business in the business. All these black people that came in to get an opportunity. So we established this national licensing system. I'm not against us being qualified. I'm not against the licensing, but the problem is now all the loan originators look like somebody else. And us black folks need hands-on attention. We need the same, no, you know what, let me take that back. We need the same opportunity and the same care at the application and origination stage that everybody else gets. We need the same advice. And people that don't feel you don't give you that advice. They don't come sit at your kitchen table and say, yeah, I need that, but no, don't give me that one. That makes the difference as to whether you get approved or not, whether you understand or not. Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, we needed that to make the laws to protect us for some of the things that we were being taken advantage of. But what they did was create something called QM. That's the ability to repay. That's that barrier as opposed to a bridge. So they said if you QM meant that 43%, if the mortgage payment was more than 43% of your gross income, then you couldn't qualify for it. But most of us pay more than 43% of our income for our rent. And we pay it every month. So QM, and what did QM do? QM provided safe haven. What that meant is, as a lender, if I underwrite this and get QM certified with this, then you can't sue me. It gave the bank safe haven from being sued because I underwrote it to the qualified mortgage guidelines. Then limited loan cost to 3%, including fees. Well, those loan officers were taking advantage and overcharging. So what did this do? What this did in low-cost areas, if you had a $75,000 house purchase and you put 5% down, then we weren't probably going to mess with you because we could only charge 3%, including the loan fees. So now they have a crisis of lack of accessibility to credit because the fees are not allowed to be over 3%. So we've been working with the FHFA director, Sandra Thompson. My suggestion to her is that we separate the origination costs from the processing and administration fees, that we allow the origination costs to be 3% so that the company can make $1,500, $1,800 so that it's worth the while to do it. So these are some of the things that came out of Dodd-Frank that because they were done by our supposed friends, the Congress people that come to see us, that we don't talk about, we don't complain about, they have no idea of how it works at the street level. Without our voice, they have no response. They don't know that it's killing us, but what we know is our homeownership percentage continues to decline. How do we gauge progress? We gauge it based on the percentage of us that are buying houses. That's our goal, ain't it? Then we have disparate housing finance policies. So I have to talk about something Ashley mentioned, our black economic situation. According to the U.S. Census, the average income, the Asians are the #1 earning ethnicity in the country. They make $98,174 on average. Whites at $68,703, Hispanics at $56,113, and blacks at $45,438 on average. You know, when you make more money, you have the opportunity to save more money and accumulate more wealth. The average black family, according to the Institute for Policy Studies, is worth $3,600. The average white family is worth $147,000. That's 40 times more wealthy. If you make more money and you have more money, credit score runs the same way. So Asians make the most, so their credit score average is 745. Whites, 734. Hispanics, 701, and blacks, 677. This is according to Equifax. So when you design a housing finance policy from a federal institution, a federal policy that was designed to provide housing opportunity to the low and middle income of America, you've designed a racially disparate housing finance policy. Now, they talked about loan level price adjustments. Prior to April 2008, there was no such thing as a loan level price adjustment. If you got approved for a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, the floor was 620 FICO. If you got approved, you had access to the same rates as somebody with the 800 FICO. Fannie and Freddie got in trouble, needed to borrow money from the American public. They borrowed $181 billion, 190 or so. They have paid back the $190 billion. And they've added another 115, 120 billion to the general treasury. Not a dime has gone to housing opportunity. And we still have these loan level price adjustments. So if you're the average white borrower at a 734 FICO score, we add 0.5% to your cost. If you're the average black borrower at a 674 FICO score, we add 2.25% to your cost. Well, you're only coming in with 5% down already, right? So what do we do to make up that cost because you don't have it? We have to raise the interest rate to create more yield so that you don't have to pay that money. So what happens? If you buy a $225,000 house, you put 5% down, you have a $213,750 loan, 5% interest at today's rates if you're white, $1147.46. That same black borrower with a slightly lower FICO score has a 6% interest rate to make up the difference in yield. That means his monthly payment is $1,281 a month. That's $134 every single month. You say, that doesn't sound like a lot. Well, if you do it for the life of the loan, it's $48,268 as a black tax. As a black tax, as an unfair black tax to the lowest paid people in the country. It works so well, they added it to PMI. Now, PMI is when you put less than 20% down, you have to have an outside insuring agency to guarantee to insure you so that the lender, if you don't pay, the lender won't lose, right? It used to be if you put 5% down, then we multiplied your loan amount by a factor of 0.78, divided that by 12, and that was the payment for everybody that put 5% down. Well, now they do it by FICO score. So now if your FICO score is 734, it's 0.5%. If it's 677, like the average black borrower, it's 1%. So if you're white, you have $89.06 on this same loan every month for PMI. If you're black, it's double at $178, and that adds another $8,549 just for the first 8 years. By then, you should be able to refinance and get out of it. Okay? So far, fair housing just ain't been fair. You had 246 years of slavery. You got 103 years of Jim Crow, and then 54 years in our current fair housing environment. You know, a friend of mine, we've had 403 years of targeted opposition. Remember, targeted opposition to black home ownership. Targeted stuff, stuff that's designed, whether it was intentional or not, that was designed, that provides opposition to black home ownership opportunity. A friend of mine, Bernadette Guerin, some of y'all know her, she said a good head start beats fast running. If I give you a big enough head start, no matter how fast I run, I can't catch you. And that's what has happened in America. All fair housing did was cement in the disparity at the time that it was done. If I give you a head start there, and then we both run at the same speed, I'll never catch you. That's why we have to make the case for reparations and redress. We have to make the case for, we had targeted opposition, then we need targeted assistance. It's not begging anybody. It's actually that word that you guys quit using, affirmative action. It's affirmative help for people who have been damaged as a community. That doesn't mean maybe me and you. Chances are if you're in here, you're at the top of your craft. You're the top 20%. But the community, the ones that don't know that they're in a fight, they're just trying to survive every day, they need you to speak up for them. Let's talk about some current statistics. You know, all good stories have good statistics if they're true, right? So in the United States today, are you guys all right? I'm not going too long, am I? Okay. I'm going to be okay. In 2021, last mortgage data year, total mortgages in this country, 14,887,667. Whites got 9,041,802. Hispanics, 1,473,302. Asians, 958,670. Blacks, 854,741. Blacks are 13.4% of the population, but only got 5.7% of the new mortgages. The black denial rate is this is nationally. The black denial rate is 20.34%, white is 11.17%. It took 1,637,776 black applications to get that 854,741 black loans. What that is a whole lot of broken hearts. That's a whole lot of opened and failed deals. You know what I mean? It's a whole lot of people that said I'm going to buy a house that didn't get there. The overall success rate, and this is a figure that we've put together, the overall success rate for black applicants is 52.1%. So nationally, 52.1% of the people who apply for a mortgage are approved. Of the black people who apply for a mortgage. In Tennessee, you know what I need to say too, is in the COVID-19 years, right? They always present them to us as a negative, but let me tell you that in 2018, there were 7 million mortgages in America. In 2019, there were 9. COVID hit, and the mortgages went to 14 million. Okay? A 5 million increase, as high as it's ever been back to 2004. The difference is in 2004, now in 2020, blacks got 717,000 of those new black 14 million mortgages. In 2004, we had 1,800,000. 1,080,000. We lost 388,000 mortgages participating in the business. We have declined. We've gone backwards in terms of our participation. In Tennessee, total mortgages, this is your state, 313,396, white 227,308, black 21,267, Hispanic 11,267, Asians 7,549. Blacks are 17.1% of the population of the state, only receive 6.79% of the new mortgages. The black denial rate is 19.72%. White is 11.84%. There were 39,927 black applications to get 21,267 new originations. The success rate for black applicants is 53.2%. The homeownership rate for blacks in Tennessee is 42.2%, slightly above the national average. The gap between black and white homeownership in Tennessee is right around the national average of 30.9%. But now let me say this to you. Blacks are 17% of the population of Tennessee. What's the percentage of blacks in Memphis? 64.9%. So I want to say this, and it's the same everywhere I go. The higher the percentage of blacks, the worse the numbers look for everybody. Okay? The higher the percentage of blacks, the worse the numbers look, the lack of access to credit becomes. So this is Memphis. This is Memphis. Total mortgages in Memphis last year, 20,617. Now, blacks are 65% of the population. Whites got 9,736 loans, blacks 5,350 loans, Hispanics 856, Asians 820. So blacks are 64.4% of the population, but only receive 25.9% of the new mortgages. We're 64.4% of the population, but only got 24.9% of the new mortgages. Whites receive 47%. The black denial rate is 23.23%. White denial is 9.82%. It's a different experience depending on what you look like when you go to buy a house in the city of Memphis. The success rate for black applicants is 51.04%. There were 10,844 applications. The homeownership rate for blacks in Memphis is 38.6%, white 64.5%. The gap is slightly smaller, but remember I said that the higher the percentage of blacks in the neighborhood, the worse the outcomes for everybody. What do these statistics tell us? What does this mean to us? This means that today's housing realities are the reflection of yesterday's unfair housing policies. You know, last time I spoke somewhere, they said, "Are you tired of making them people uncomfortable?" So the reality is, what we've been doing don't work. What we've been doing don't work. We need a new plan. We need a new plan. If we're ever going to narrow this gap, we have to have a new plan. So the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, and Ashley talked about these already, has identified some basic low-hanging fruit. That if we apply these, it will start to make a big difference, and then we can go after some of the other stuff, like with Credit Smart and working with some of the buyers who aren't qualified yet. But if we just apply these to begin with, we can start to have a significant impact in our success rate. First is a national targeted down payment housing fund. I didn't say assistance on purpose. A national target. The same people who were targeted for opposition need to be targeted for redress. The same people who were targeted, the same opposition needs to be applied to bring it whole. To reform the school loan calculation for mortgage qualifying. If you get a Fannie Mae loan, it's one way. If you get a Freddie Mac loan, it's another way. If you get a FHA loan, it's another way. If you get a VA loan, it's another way. That we look at your school loans and qualify you for this mortgage qualifying. It's time that we have some stability so we know what we're working with. The average black student, 86.8% of black students who attend four-year institutions have student loan debt. The average black student is retarded in their purchase of a new home by 10 years as compared to their white peers. It's time that we reform and standardize the largest debt in America, $1.7 trillion, higher than credit card debt, higher than car debt, auto debt. School loan debt is the highest debt. And then it's time to eliminate loan level price adjustments, what I call the poor pay more fee adjustment. You know, in my own organization, it's eliminate. But we keep getting people who put out stuff for us that say regulate or adjust. I'm not saying adjust loan level price adjustments. I'm not saying regulate loan price adjustments. I'm saying eliminate loan level price adjustments. They are unfair. They're racially disparate, whether they were intended to be or not, and they need to be gone. And Fannie and Freddie are whole again, other than the fact that the government's taking all their money. It's time to reform this housing system that we have. It's time to provide redress to the people who have been damaged, and it's time to restore the dream of home ownership to black Americans again. You know, we stand on the shoulders of great people who gave their lives for us. And so don't make any mistakes. You owe. We owe. We owe. We didn't get here just because you're so good, you're so smart, you're so cute. We owe. Thank you.
So how powerful was that? So that's what we came here for. I don't think until you hear the message from the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the way that Mr. Austin brings that information, you really don't have an understanding of the crisis, right? So let's give him another round of applause. And I always appreciate his ability to bring that report like he's never done it before, right? So what we have next for you is they're going to start bringing out lunch. They'll start with the salads. We have salmon and chicken, so they'll give you those options. Is there anyone that needs a vegetarian? Can y'all raise your hand just to see if there's anybody? Okay, thank you. So we will go ahead and be served. At this time, before we bring the virtual message from Congressman Cohen, we will have our Register of Deeds, Ms. Shalandria Ford, come forward with updates and the things that are happening in her office right now and the active work that they're doing. Ms. Ford.
Good afternoon to everyone. I was looking at this presentation, and I noticed some of our leaders, Malcolm X and Dr. King. But when I first took office in 2018, what stayed in my mind is a quote, a famous quote that Dr. King made. And the quote is, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter." Again, can we say that? Can we say that? Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And with that being said, in 2018, I was elected Shelby County Register of Deeds for Memphis and Shelby County. This was a significant journey for me, and not just being elected as an elected official, I also became the first African American person and also first woman to hold this office. This came dear to my heart, but thank you. But with that being said, what really stayed on my heart is the people of Shelby County. And again, what stayed in my heart was the people of Shelby County. Shelby County is experiencing a housing crisis. We are losing out to out-of-town investors. They're coming in, buying our properties, buying homes by the load. And is a critical issue for Shelby County. And as one of your leaders here in Shelby County, it is my duty to sound the alarm, to be the voice for our constituents and for our citizens, the ones that cannot be heard, that can't get their voices across. We stand in their place to eradicate for our citizens. And that's what I've been doing, being elected as your Shelby County Register of Deeds. I just want to share with you, I would like to share with you that recently that we've been experiencing deed filings within our office, not just Shelby County, but Tennessee as a whole. And what we're spearheading, we spearheaded forums, local forums in this area, us housing and also fraudulent deed filings within Shelby County. And I just want to give kudos to President Wonda McGowan and also NAREB future President Darrell Lewis for taking it initiative to be the spokesperson for the real estate community. And I'd just like to thank you, give you a round of applause for stepping out there and fighting for your citizens. But with that being said, the fight is not over. You know, it's going to all of us to communicate, all of us effectively to come together with and resolution of the housing crisis for Shelby County. Our heard. We must keep having these meetings, these round tables, these black housing forums to educate not only educate the public as well. But with that being said, we do have, for the registry office, we do have some things in place. Before I leave, I advise you that we do have we have a fraudulent deed program. It's a actual notification program that if anyone tries to steal property or obtain information, pertinent information without your knowledge, it will allow you protect yourselves. This program, state community with Ms. McGowan, also Darrell Lewis, but please just stay informing your clients and the citizens of Shelby County. Shelby matters, and most important, citizens of Shelby County matters to us. Thank you.
Pastor Earl, motivational.
Let us pray. Thank you for what our eyes have seen. Food of our bodies. Man.
Did all that talking this morning, didn't get in, did you? What we're going to do is message from Congressman Cohen. He is in the fight and couldn't be with us today, but he did extend. While we do that, we will be turning over the space as we set up for our solution panel. So we've talked about the problem, we've identified the crisis, there is an attack on Black home ownership, and so now we will begin the phase of talking through solutions with our panel conversation. So please enjoy your food. Feel free to get up if you need to. The restrooms are here to the left. If you step out and make calls, certainly do as we reset the stage. Thank you.
opportunity to speak with you today. You perform an excellent function, and that's an important part of success in America, to have a house, to have pride of ownership and an investment as well. It's a great problem in Black America that housing is not as common, and some of it's been discrimination in the past, of course, but there haven't been efforts to help Black Americans to achieve the pride and of home ownership, and that's something all Americans desire and want. As your congressman from the 9th District, it's been a priority of mine to see that people get good housing, and home ownership is one way we do that. Around the country, people of brown and Black are 45% lower in owning homes, home ownership, than the white families. And in Memphis, Black ownership rate's 43% compared to 74% for white Memphians. This is staggering because Black house ownership is part of wealth. And we know that there's a problem in the difference in the wealth and the incomes of Black and white Memphians, as well as Americans. My political career, I've fought and advocated for housing needs for my constituents, and there have been improvements over the years, but not nearly enough. Several pieces of legislation I've introduced while I've been in Congress to assist with the housing needs of all Memphians, but also all Americans. The Housing Accountability Act, which would hold property owners of low-income, federally subsidized housing facilities accountable for poor living conditions. So we've seen that in both rental and in rental cases mostly, and we've seen it with a couple of predominant apartment complexes where I think it's a group called Goodwill or Good Something, which is a misnomer, has been involved, and we've been in all kind of efforts to try to get them to clean up their program and give the tenants in their apartments decent housing, which they had not been doing. I'm also a co-sponsor of the American Housing and Economic Mobility Act, which will help bring down the costs for renters and buyers and level the playing field so working families everywhere can find a decent place to live at a decent price. It would provide assistance to people hurt by federal housing policy failures. And of course, we've gotten some programs in Memphis which have been most helpful. Choice Neighborhood Grant, which helped with foot homes and New South City, much better housing there near the downtown area south of FedEx Forum. And we've worked on some other projects in the past where we've got basically all of our projects eliminated and better housing installed for people and mixed use. And we've worked on those over the years. All the housing projects have been redone. We got money in the community projects for seniors, low-income seniors who need help with their housing through LINK and other housing programs. We're trying to do some more in the next community projects for the next budget as well. We supported the Build Back Better Act, which had quite a bit in it to help, but of course that failed. It was unfortunate it failed because we had it passed the House but not the Senate, and it had $170 billion for a range of measures that would make housing more affordable. It's $24 billion to expand housing voucher programs, which 70% of those would benefit people of color. But unfortunately, it didn't get through the Senate. We continue to work to ensure equal housing opportunities available to Black Americans in every part of the country. And as long as I'm in Congress, I'll continue to fight for civil rights, civil liberties, and for everybody to have access to health care and housing as well. Those are two fundamental rights that we've neglected too many times. Thank you again for inviting me to be here with you. I hope your conference is successful and enjoyable. And I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to represent you in Washington.
So we thank Congressman Cohen for his words today. I do want to acknowledge our partners today and bring them forward and give them an opportunity to bring greetings. This event could not happen without the support of partners and partners who continue to support the work of NAREB year after year, month after month, event after event. So certainly I'd like to bring forward Convergence Memphis. If you're prepared just to speak to some comments, Ms. Phyllis.
For this opportunity. And it is our distinct NAREB housing in Black America. This record in Black knowledge and discussions seeking for racial glad to be a partner of. I also let you guys know how important this is. We have members here. The Victoria Mortgage of Bank Corps South, if he would stand so you could see him. We also have Brody Wumble from Simmons Bank Affairs Office. Memphis. The mission of Convergence facilitate new to advance racial equity in home ownership. How do we do that? Address the trust gap, information source gap. This is a NAREB, and we be a part of the conversation, the ongoing issues, and hopefully to workable solutions for equity in homeowners in the city of Memphis. Thank you for bringing to us your knowledge and tools needed to combat the impending dilemma facing Black Americans as it pertains to home ownership. I look forward to more about the solutions in the session. Thank you for having me.
Next, we have greetings from Women's Memphis. Is Ms. K here?
Thank you, everyone. Give me just a minute here. Okay, I'm ready. Greetings, community. As the 2022 president of the Women's Council of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, Memphis chapter, it is my great pleasure and honor to recognize the National Association of Real Estate Brokers and to thank them for hosting the Tennessee and Memphis edition of the State of Housing in Black America, which highlights the challenges that Black Americans face daily as it relates to being able to acquire safe and affordable housing in Tennessee and the United States as a whole. The Women's Council is the largest affiliate organization of NAREB and is charged with creating positive community engagement, being home buyer education, and financial literacy opportunities for the community, as well as to aid in teaching the things necessary to build financial wealth amongst its citizens. The Sheba report that is produced by the National Association of Real Estate Brokers leaves us with much to think about, and it shows us many areas where immediate improvement can be made in order to truly resolve the challenges Black Americans face. While there has been toward and Memphis, there is still much work to be done. I am thankful that I am able to support an organization where the primary focus is to solve the problem so that Black people can experience the American dream of home ownership in the same manner as all other individuals and families in this country. We all know that home ownership is a cornerstone of financial wealth. Home ownership is where financial wealth building starts for most Black people in America. Everyone should be given a fair chance to achieve of owning property. There is not another organization that I can think of that works harder to promote that in the Black community than NAREB. I thank NAREB for together this event, much needed, and for creating where ideas and strategy can flow freely towards creating democracy for all.
We'll now have greetings from our partner for this event, Community Development Corporation, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon. Damon Williams, Executive Director. I've been 2 years and you know me. Things happening in Fraser. It can kind of be a little bit of sometimes, but I'm here to tell you that there are good things that are also happening. There hasn't been investment in 40 years, but now efforts and things on the way. It's almost $100 million of investment in that neighborhood. Fraser is a unique neighborhood in that it is so similar to so many. So all of the things that you've seen, the disparities, education, housing, there. But one of the things that's unique about Fraser is the people. I have worked all over, never seen a cohesive, stronger, community-led. Those folks together and they work things out. And I know that was work done before I got here. I know that's not easy. People know that there are positive things happening, and I want to invite you to some of them and share in some of them. We have a program called Fraser Connect. It's our community the word food desert, they throw that around. Fraser is not a food desert, and food deserts around as long as to start our own that we can throughout the neighborhood. So next Friday, we're going to be opening up the garden, having a little toast, and 65 Georgian. It's where we house the program, and it's a really unique hydroponics garden that once we're going to develop classes, teach people how to grow their own seed, how to get that seed, and then we're going to take pods and distribute them throughout the community. And so that's just the beginning. But also, if that program is sustainable, if it doesn't cost too much money, we are in a very fortunate position. We've made a lot of those lots that some of the investments we aren't developing. We want to make sure that we are active. So with community gardens, playgrounds, and things like that. I also want to invite you to our Fraser concert series. It's where we'll be having live every third Friday of the summer. Flyers are going out today. And of course, on the 25th, we're partnering with the NAREB to bring you Frazier's Home Ownership Fair. It's not just about Frazier. It's not just about home ownership. We're really centering this around Black liberation, around really thinking about what happens next. We are at the precipice of something, and if we don't make the right decisions now, it's going to be dire. And so people who are interested in continuing to build Black wealth, people who are interested in making sure that we maintain home ownership, and that we are thoughtful what's going to happen to the renters. If you are interested in those things, please come out and join the conversation with us on June 25th. We'll be out there from 11 to 4. We're going to do a radio remote. There'll be community organizations, food trucks, all the whole nine. So thank you. Hopefully, we talk about real solutions that we can actually act on today. And thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good time so far? Learn something? So I'm gonna ask this one last question, then I'm gonna introduce our next speaker. What zip code are you from? 38107. Where else? 306. 116. Orange Mound. That's all. 1121111. Got you. What I want you to do when you leave here again, ride your from. See the opportunities that are development and in those are for you to go back to the urban core and redevelop where you're from. Because if no one else and you can't gentrification if you next speaker today is Mr. Ken Moody, who serves as Special Assistant to Jim Strickland for the Office of Community Affairs. His work at the City of Memphis and various the Director of Public, Deputy Director of Park, Administrator of Center. I might also add that he was recently Shelby County Mayor. He is also an active board member of community organizations Alpha Omega Veteran Service, Family Safety Center, and his place of worship is New Baptist Church, which was formerly December Gray. Mr. Moody earned sciences from college as well as sociology from Memphis State University while pursuing his undergraduate at the University of Memphis for team. As you can see, like 7 feet tall. Remaining loyal to his honor, he went on to earn an executive MBA from the University of Memphis. Aside from his career, Mr. Moody has been blessed to be a husband to his wonderful wife, Gwendolyn, and a father to his 3 beautiful daughters, Jasmine, Kendra, and Reba Moody. Without further ado, Mr. Ken Moody. Also so yeah, come on in.
All right. Hey, good afternoon, and let me, to those of you who are not from Memphis, let me welcome you. I think some of our panelists are from Memphis, and to the Memphians, thank you for being here. It is always a pleasure to be here among people who are trying to do better by our people for our city. I do want to acknowledge this issue when I walked in. I know this is about, especially for African Americans. And when I walked in, I see really an expert from that can really answer all the questions and give information on our program. That's our Housing and Community Development Director, Ms. Ashley Cash. So if you've got any questions about what the city is doing and what programs are there, she's the one that you need to see. I bring you greetings again from our city mayor, Jim Strickland. And let me thank you all again for bringing this issue to the forefront. It is something that we as Americans, one of many issues that we have to deal with. Homeownership is that one opportunity for us to think about ourselves and to have that. This morning, one of the participants here, virtual or local, but she talked about how when an African becomes a homeowner, it gives it equity that allows us to send our kids to college, it allows us to build up our community, it allows us more for our homes. And so, again, thank you all for being here and keeping this topic at the forefront. I'm the youngest of 11 kids. I grew up in a family. When my wife first got married, we stayed in the home, 38106 now, zip code ago. I grew up 38106 and 38109. And it took my wife a while to get our credit, get our income together. Still had challenges to be able to buy a house. So again, it's so important that those of us who have gone through those challenges and really know what it's about, being our home, for us to do what you're doing, having these conversations, getting the right people together to talk about that. We got to talk about that to the financial institutions, that they maybe, that we know everyone don't want to take a risk, a high risk, but there's what we can do to make it an opportunity more affordable and more of an opportunity for individuals of our race to be able to buy houses. So there's a whole lot of sometimes uncomfortable conversations we have to have, but we can't be afraid to have them. And we got to be open and honest when we have those conversations, because we all open and honest, we hadn't always been able to buy a house either, right? We've had those challenges that some people are having now, and so we've got to do all that we can to help as many people as we can to become homeowners, and especially in the African American community. Our city is only as prosperous as our African Americans are, and home ownership is a big part of how we move forward. So again, on behalf of the mayor, thank you all for being here. Thank you for keeping this conversation to the forefront, and whatever we can do to help, let us know. And again, you've got the one person here that can help it all happen. We need to build back up our communities. Now, in with this, and I were blessed to be out of our community in South Memphis, childhood home, blessing because we want our family to the demise of that community, because many of us were able to do better, and it's not we're any better. We just want to do better for our families, but directly contribute to communities going. So what we've got to do is how we build back up those communities, so when our young people finish here, they come back and live here, and it doesn't matter whether it's a viable, nice community, they won't care to worry about gentrification either, because we'll make sure that these are affordable houses. These are communities everyone wants to live in. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for doing this. And I got to jet back out to the house. I came by and said thank you and welcome those of you from out of town to Memphis, and congratulate and encourage and appreciate those who are here in Memphis that are being to make sure we make it as fair as we can. Thank you all again. Thank you for doing this as well, man. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks from the city of Memphis, and certainly thank you for your attendance, Ms. Cash. We will now allow you guys to eat. We're going to go ahead and reset the stage, so we'll take a brief intermission to do that. Please enjoy your food. The station is to my right. We have bathrooms to the left. Thank you.
if I can have your attention for a brief, quick moment, I would like all of our NAREB past presidents to come forward so that we can take a picture with Mr. Austin before he heads to his next event. Thank you, and you all continue to enjoy your meal. I'm supposed to have Sandy right there. Okay, Mr. Photographer, I think I got them all pulled together. And then we're going to get a picture with our guest as well. Mr. Courtney and Ashley, I know y'all trying to eat your meal, but could you come up quickly for a quick photo? Thank you. Memphis Executive Board, come forward, please. To our sponsors, can you come forward, please, to take a picture? Ms. Robinson, can we have our sponsors come forward for a picture, please? Mr. Damien, can we have your picture, please, sir? Madam President, can we have your picture, please?
You want them with the executive board as well?
Which one you talking about?
These and them, you want them with the executive board?
I'm gonna do the sponsors and then we're gonna get some more pictures. I'm gonna catch the sponsors before they come out.
You want me up here with y'all?
I'm trying to make sure I got all my sponsors up here. Get the sponsors first. Madam President Stephanie Bobo and YRD, can y'all come forward, please, for your picture?
I was thinking this would be better. What you think? Okay.
NAREB Women Council and Board of Governors, if y'all can come forward to take your picture, please. Thank you. Board of Governors, Ladora Cooper. Okay. Yeah, you president, but these are your Board of Governors, Demetrius, Nidra. Okay. Women Council, Board of Governors. Come forward for your picture, please. Huh? Charter members of Women Council, and then we're going to have new members, but we're going to do charter members of Women Council. Immediate past president, Cheryl Muhammad. Lisa Thomas. I don't have my glasses on, y'all. I'm trying to call everybody's name. I call them by their name. Madam Sharita, a charter member, Women Council. Immediate past president, Cheryl Muhammad. President K. Thompson.
Okay, hopefully you all are wrapping up your lunch. We are going to bring the program back together for our solutions panels. Turn the music up. I think they got it. So next we have, I don't know, can I turn the music up? So next we have updates from the Office of HUD, Housing and Urban Development. And we have with us today the acting director. Wonda McGowan was appointed as the acting office director. Memphis, Nashville field offices effective June 1st, 2022. Prior to this advisory list for field policy and management's Tennessee field offices in 2020. In this role, direct support and assist Nashville field office director and was responsible for establishing, developing, and maintaining constructive and effective relationships with local offices and state and local elected officials. She served as the for all Tennessee offices, the point for the Memphis and Knoxville field offices, and was HUD's primary point of contact for consumer and industry partners, HUD client groups, and the general public. Coordinated HUD goals and initiatives internally and with federal, state, and local agencies, private and nonprofit organizations, and planning organizations. Prior to her current role, she was appointed to the supervisor and analyst lead for the administration district office in February 2013, which is responsible for the oversight of 13 regional offices and approximately 6,200 employees in the Southeast District. In this role, she provided operational assistance to the district director and officer in promulgating administrative guidance to VA regional office medical integrated program benefits and services. She was the liaison for VBA program and field leadership, offering analyses, advice, guidance concerning VBA benefits, and worked closely with congressional members to address veteran concerns. Dr. McGowan began her career in the government with the Department of Veteran Affairs in February 2005. As a veteran service, during her tenure, she has held volunteer duties outside of her to not only entitlements, but to also assistance to veterans. These duties include to the minority, which work directly with the HUD VASH program, senior veteran service representative, rating veteran service representative, supervisor veteran service representative, and United States Army, of Science, Industrial Engineering Sciences from Maury State, and a bachelor's degree with an emphasis in University. T. Michelle McCarroll.
Afternoon. Get myself together here. Thank you. First and foremost, as she stated, I am new as the field office director. So new to her. And wealth gap. HUD enforce the fair housing processes property building, expand, including for affordable multifamily preservation. Government homes go